Yeah, go ahead.
The first question we would like to ask you is that how does your profession mostly influence the society?
Ah. Well, the legal profession, I think, is one of the most categorically misunderstood professions. Um, it's very difficult to define what the profession means to the society. But from what I understand, is that the law is a very integral part to modern society. In many ways, to me, when I was studying the subject, it felt like the backbone of a civilization, something without which a society just could not possibly exist. Because when you have too much freedom and when you have too many choices, you are almost never able to decide on a particular choice. And that is where the main function of that profession came from. Because the law, my profession actually has three aspects: it has the law being made, it has the law being argued, and the law being judged. And I think you're quite aware of the three arms of the profession. You have lawyers, you have judges, and you have lawmakers, as you would have studied last year in some of your civics backgrounds. So the law is very integral to modern society. It is absolutely the backbone, the mainstay of any societal force. And it's also the most important binding force. I don't know if you understand what I mean by binding force. It sort of holds all concepts together in a civilization. So when you have concepts like nation or international public interest, or even terms like crime, peace, all of these terms would lose meaning without law, without the field of law, and therefore the field of justice. Because as you know, once you have law, you need to have someone to decide law as well. Because every time your right stands affected, you need to have someone to be able to reinforce it and put it back in its place. So each are codependent to one another, and it's definitely the main. I don't think we could have existed just as a race or as a population or as an ethnicity kind of arrangement without having a central structure which binds us all into a common force. So you would find that, I seem to think now that, it's not just in drafting laws to ensure that a legal framework is relevant to changing times, but even by way of precedentiary judgments, you would know that the courts perform a very important function of deciding cases. Once the case is decided, you have what is called a precedent. And that precedent is actually a judgment which has already been a decided position of law by the court. And then that judgment becomes law as well. So when you and I have to look at some of the historic developments that have taken place, it's very interesting to know, and I want to share this with all of you, that not everything is a man-made law or a God-made law. There are things which come by way of society having developed through these judgments. I'll give you an example to make this clearer. If you remember, a lot of our current issues center around environmental law, right? We are discussing climate change, the UN is discussing water crises, and they're discussing ocean issues, marine biology issues. Now, this environmental law is actually not part of the legislative made law, right? It's not made by the legislature per se. Environmental law has been developed by the judiciary, the courts, through various problems and judgments. I don't know if you've heard of it, but there's a landmark judgment called MC Mehta versus the Union of India. Now, this is one of those huge judgments which brings up several issues about environment, several issues starting from, how dams have spoiled ecosystems around them, and why hydropower electricity is not necessarily the most renewable resource because they cause a lot of devastation. Now, all that, if you see, is not developed by the legislative branch. It's actually developed by people's interpretation and a judge's interpretation of where next to go when you're confronted with a problem that confronts society. So the law, my profession, is very much a product of social evolution. Without it, you wouldn't have the society developing into something more refined and obviously more structured and disciplined. So whether it is environmental law, whether it is the basic structure of governing, or whether it is the constitution, whether it is your fundamental rights, Even things like LGBT rights, right? You talk of people with the same sex having the same rights to marry and to have relationships together. All of this is evolutionary law. It's not law made by the legislature. So that is how important this profession had the potential to be. That is its influence in the society, that it has the power to construct lives. It has the power to create much more than what a written out law can create. So, and if you see, there are more examples which you would study about later. I think whether you take the Ganga pollution case, there was a huge hue and cry about how much pollution the Ganga is having. The Taj corridor case, or even I think the Delhi hazardous industries had some kind of a case which was related. Even the introduction of CNG, which is natural, the liquid fuel which you're using for your cars, being replaced, and the diesel being replaced. All of this, child labor, everything, environmental protection, all of this is actually a product of law which has evolved, not as a result of policy, but as a result of the strength that society has and as a result of the problems that society has faced. So I say that it's a very empowering tool for humanity. Those who know how to use it can really create a huge difference. It is so interwoven to the natural fabric of society that it's difficult to imagine anything without the mainstay of having law. So that was the importance of the profession. But of course, using it depends entirely on the kind of people that we have and the kind of training that we give them, which is why all of you are so important to this movement, because you're the tomorrow that all of these professions look at. So the law would be powerless if the people using it were not educated enough and in the right way. So yes, it's very fundamental to society.
So we'd go ahead with the second question.
The next question is that what are your views on the word peace, justice, and strong institutions?
Big terms. So I don't know if there is a short answer to that really, but I'll tell you what my common parlance view is. So what were the terms? Peace, justice, and what was the last one? Sorry.
And strong institutions.
Strong institutions. Okay. So let's look at it like a triangle. I think that peace and justice are the base of the triangle, and strong institutions are the top of the triangle, the top vertex. And why I say that, let me explain each of the terms as I understand them, as simply as I can possibly put it. And you can stop me if you think I'm going too technical. You see, the dictionary would define peace for you in a very different way. It would be generic. It would say it's a lack of conflict. It would say, at the most, philosophy books would say it's a freedom from fear, right? But I think this definition is no longer enough. Sadly, the world that you and I live in and the world that you will inherit has a very, very different scenario. And I think it's very important that we define peace together in the modern context of what we are living in. And today, peace is just no longer the absence of conflict. And it's no longer just freedom from fear. Today, peace has an internal aspect and an external aspect, right? I think internally, peace would mean tranquility, which means just the absence of conflict and a sense of calmness, right? Tranquility enjoyed politically by virtue of having a good governance order, by virtue of having good order in society, not just in governance, but even among the people, when you don't differentiate with each other on different grounds of religion and ethnicity and various other grounds, opportunity. And you just have what is called great order within the members of the society. That is internal peace of a nation by way of good conduct. And it also means by having a good value system. Because no matter how robust or how beautiful the law is, if the people are not able to enforce it effectively because of the kind of people they are, it's ineffective, and then peace cannot be achieved whatsoever. So definitely this is the intrinsic fabric, the internal issue. Externally, then it would mean that when you have good relationships with your neighbors, with your other nations, and when you are not just trying to get power on top of them, that is peace. When you can, even externally, you are at peace with everyone and you're trying to promote what is good for the larger good. So that is peace externally. And it's very important that from the international relations perspective, that peace is also defined, because I may be peaceful in my land, but if I'm not at peace outside, we will have what we are seeing today with the pandemic. And I think essentially this is because everyone wants to achieve control. And this control is an illusion. Even we parents do it, I try to control the habit of a 3-year-old child. I want him to stop, he can't talk, but I say, no, stop talking, stop whining. It's an illusion. The truth is, you cannot control a baby. It's going to do what it wants. Similarly with a puppy, and similarly with nations. You cannot control. And I think the enemy that peace has right now are actually 5 elements: anger, envy, ambition, avarice, and pride. I think if these 5 features go away, we will be able to achieve perpetual peace, permanent peace. The problem is, when you are a nation, when you're a country, you're always trying to get power. Whether you look at history of the British colonialism in India or any colonization for that matter, it has always been a struggle for power. So peace is the absence of wanting, greed, and power to be able to get a hold of control. And that is why it's probably just so difficult to achieve that kind of peace where you have enough security for yourself. And a lot of people now, that's taking pity, that's not peace. We have come to now, it was not so difficult earlier. So I define peace now as the climate of freedom, which we now know is so dependent on this external and intrinsic parameters, these characters. So it's easy to proclaim it. It's very difficult to serve actual peace. It's easy to speak about, but it's very hard to actually serve it. And to attain it, we must know the full meaning of what actually freedom is, the full meaning of whether we are ready to pay the full price of having peace. So that is how I go with peace. Coming to the second bit of the triangle, we're talking about justice. Now, justice is essentially the mainstay, the cornerstone, the fabric that is able to give you a choice to feel that you have been wronged, right? Now, when your peace is disturbed and when your freedom is taken away, you have to have a mechanism by which you can put it back. Otherwise, peace will fail. And that's where justice steps in. And look how interconnected they are. And they're not mutually exclusive concepts anymore. Justice is also the absence of, bias, the absence of a prejudice, trying to correlate what is necessary to make sure that you feel peaceful, to make sure that you feel that your rights are all in the same place and that you are an active member of society with voice and choice, like your school says. So justice is a tool which is constantly trying to interdependently, codependently get peace to work. And on the top of that vertex, you actually have the strong institutions bit. That is necessary because without these institutions, you would not have anyone. That's what binds the two elements together finally. It is the institution through which this is exercised. You wouldn't feel justice unless there was an institution to be able to exercise that aspect, right? You need an institution which will uphold it, and you need an institution which will understand what you need, when you need, and how to be able to make you feel secure about it. And therefore, the need for strong institutions is at the very top, because without that, you may have very, very good laws. You may have excellent concepts. We have excellent theory, even in our country. The problem happens when you try to enforce it through people who don't understand what is necessary and how important this duty is to be able to protect a person's freedom or to be able to protect a person in the right way. So what you're seeing today with Delhi and its lack of oxygen and lack of medical facilities and the healthcare system collapsing, it's essentially because the machinery is collapsing, the institutions are collapsing. And why are the institutions collapsing? It's because the kind of people that we are looking at who are actually using the institution, they are again falling prey to anger, avarice, greed, power, control, the ones that I mentioned for peace. So it's very interconnected. And strong institutions are so necessary to be able to actually achieve peace or achieve justice. So that's how the triangle works. I hope I answered the question, but if not, let me know.
That was beautiful. You can go ahead.
So the next question is, what are the issues that usually come up in the court by the people? Do all these issues lead to a common cause?
So the court is like a witch's cauldron. It has everything from, anything that you can imagine. And that's one of the reasons why our courts are so overburdened and they just seem to not be working. I think the workload is because of the kind of cases that we have. Anything that you can think of, everything that comes under humanity falls within the jurisdiction of the court. So whether it is commercial law, which is essentially intellectual property rights, contracts, companies' dealings, a foreign company coming in, settling in India, how do we deal with them? An Indian company who loses out on business opportunities elsewhere, bank guarantees, anything that you can imagine which is required for commercial business eventually falls under commercial law. So you have commercial law coming in. Then you have the writ jurisdiction, which is a very important aspect. The courts deal with writs, which means these are petitions which you can do if the government has done something wrong to you. I'm going to put it in very simple terms and not use legal jargon. But whenever you feel wronged by a government or a state body, you can go straight to the court and say, this is not part of the mainstay of the Constitution, and they're in violation of what I should be getting. And therefore, that falls under the writ jurisdiction, when it's only an action of the government which you want to challenge. Then you have civil law, where you have cases like property, succession, partition. I want my property to be divided equally among the surviving members of my family. There is a sudden case which comes up because somebody died without leaving a will. All of that comes under civil law, right? Civil law also has another aspect, like family law. Now, family law, it deals with marriages and divorces, and there can be so many things, guardianship and maintenance. And what if you have a minor child without a father? How do you deal with that? How do you deal with asset allocation? All of this comes under family law. The court also deals with environmental law, as we just discussed a while ago. So now you have a dedicated tribunal. It's called the National Green Tribunal, which deals with only cases where you feel the environment is being harmed. And let me tell you, you and I can bring in an action if we feel that somebody is doing something wrong to the environment. So that branch of law deals only with the environment. We have also seen a huge number of cases on taxation. When you pay taxes and people who are avoiding it, or or even whether the government has imposed a right taxation regime. So those come under taxation law. There can be direct taxes, indirect taxes, excise duty, sales goods. So the list is endless. And finally, you come to your question about common cause. Well, of course, these are all meant for all. So eventually, the common cause is to interpret law, to bring in a new legal concept, to bring in justice, which is meant for not just the majority, but also, the minority aspect of a community. So yes, the common cause which underlies it is obviously the same societal fabric which you asked me about in the beginning. Because if there is a society, this is an order which governs the common interests of that society. So of course, that is the common cause. The common cause is us. So yeah, I think that completes it. There are loads of categories where the courts are actually working. So all types of cases, marriage, birth, death, anything and everything can actually fit into that cover of what comes in before the court.
Okay. So the next question is, no country today can positively declare that they have successfully achieved peace, justice, and been able to seize inequalities. What might be the cause? How can we legally ensure the same, and what are your thoughts?
Sorry, I can't quite hear you. Your voice seems to be breaking up for me. Do you mind repeating that one for me?
Okay. No country today can positively declare that they have successfully achieved peace, justice, and been able to seize inequalities. What?
Sorry, just give me a quick minute. Let me just readjust my sound settings. I think there's something wrong. Just 1 minute.
Okay. Okay. Yes, we are able to.
I'm sorry, I think something went wrong with my system. Sorry, you can now speak.
Okay, let me repeat. Yeah. No country today can positively declare that they have successfully achieved peace, justice, and been able to seize inequalities. What might be the cause? How can we legally ensure the same, and what are your thoughts?
Wow, I think you've just asked me the question which all the global leaders are asking each other right now. So I feel really nice about myself right now. Well, a very thoughtful question, and I'm so glad that you're thinking on that line, because if I had all the world leaders thinking like this, we wouldn't be here today. So let me answer that from what I believe is my own perspective. The concept of equality is very misunderstood. I know you've read it in great detail in grade 6 and 7, so you would be able to understand me when I say that the dictionary meaning of equality is something completely different, and the legal meaning and the practical meaning, there is a huge gap in the three, right? The dictionary meaning of equality, the academic meaning of equality, which basically means equal, it's a myth. It's completely utopian. It's something which is too idealistic to achieve, and I don't even think that that's what lawmakers had in mind when they used equality for your constitution. I'll tell you what I understand of equality. I don't believe equality is about being equal. It's about having the equality of opportunity. Now, there's a big difference, and let me give you a small little example which I used to sort of understand this myself many years ago at college. If I have two trees, I have an apple tree, both the trees have apples, right? And I place two people from different sections of society together, one very rich, one very poor, probably disabled. Let's go with poor for now. I place them both in front of each tree. The tree has an equal number of apples to pick, right? And they start picking. Now somebody collects 5, the rich guy collects 5, the poor guy collects 2. Right? Now our books say that this is unequal. But the lawmakers, when they thought of equality, they said this is not unequal, because how many apples you collect is a matter of effort. It's a matter of ability. I'm sure you'll agree. If I'm taller, and if I'm more skilled, and if I'm stronger, I might be able to actually collect much more than somebody else who's not so strong. It has nothing to do with my background. It has nothing to do, with ethnicity or race or religion or type of society I come from. And people are, and now let me tell you what the gap is today. Most world leaders, when they talk of equality, want to achieve the other type of equality, which means that in this particular example, if I have the rich man collecting 5 apples and the poor man collecting 2 apples, he will say, oh, you're rich, so give away 3 apples so that both of you have 2.5 or something like that. Now that's the problem, because that's not equality. Equality is not about giving away from somebody who has more resources to a person who has less resources just to achieve some sort of a balance in the resources. It's not giving the same resources. It's not giving the same number of things. Equality is about both of them have the same opportunity, the same conditions. Or was it that he was on a wheelchair, so he could not have possibly done it as well as the other guy? I don't know if you are understanding what the difference is about. But, and I think there was another example which I wanted to give you. It escapes me. No, I remember it. Let me explain that to you. For example, a doctor, and let's say there's a rickshaw puller, right? This is another example. It's not connected to the Apple bit. They can never be equal. Why can they never be equal? Because they just do not come from the same status or the same economic standing or the same education, right? But it can be ensured that both are equally held responsible for the violation of some act, right? And that the children of both of these segments would have an equal opportunity to pursue their dreams or their education. So there again, this is the difference between equality and having equal opportunity. What the Constitution or what any common law jurisdiction is aiming to target is actually the equality of an opportunity, which means my daughter and my domestic help's daughter may be able to study the same content, right, delivered by the same institutions. But we are failing because the lack of the equal opportunity comes because in my country, a government school will never, almost never, have the same set of education factors that you have, or I have, or my daughter has, right? Now that's where the deprivation comes. So it's not about how many apples you collect. That's a question of merit, and it's a question of ability, where everyone is the same. And it doesn't certainly mean that if I have more money, I have to go around distributing it to everyone so that everybody has 50 rupees in the society and no one has 100. So that's not the meaning of equality. Now, to answer your question, or coming to the question, that the reason no country is able to claim such an achievement is because there is only so much that the law can do. There is also a human aspect to this whole debate about equality, where humans try to look better than their peers. Right. So you're constantly striving to do things just to look good. I want a bigger car. I want a bigger house because I want to look good. It doesn't matter what means or resources I have. It doesn't even matter at times whether I need it or not. It's all a game of trying to fit in. And if you see the human fabric of society, you'll understand why India is still in the third stage of development while others are in the first stage of development with respect to equality. So a lot of Scandinavian countries, I believe, have really gone far ahead. If you see the statistics, they've made really good progress because they have been able to bridge the gap of levels of literacy have been floated to each segment of society. And if you see there, essentially in a Scandinavian country or an American country, professors and teachers are so well respected and valued that if a student wants to become an academic instructor, they are paid much more than what India would do for its own academic instructors. Now, when you do that, you're giving the poor guy the same equality of opportunity to have access to better teachers, irrespective of which section of society they come from. And the result of that is gorgeous, it's beautiful, because then what you have is irrespective of whether I'm rich or poor, whether I'm a farmer's son or a businesswoman's son. The point is I go to a school where I have wonderful teaching and I graduate with a mindset which is completely different, right? I graduate with an empowering mindset because my quality of instruction has been so good. So I am a product of equal opportunity, and therefore I'm able to achieve equality so much better than maybe the rest of us. So in India, I think the concept is skewed because we are looking only at whether everybody has the same number of apples in their basket, irrespective of which part of society. But we're not really looking at the finer aspect, that did they have the same opportunity to pick the apples as efficiently as the other aspects? I think that's one of the reasons why it's really not worked out. Sorry, again, this was a vague answer, but lawyers are not able to speak in smaller sentences. I wish I could, but I'm miserably failing. You can stop me if it's going longer and beyond your time.
No problem. It was like a very good answer. Like we understood it
Thank you.
really properly.
I feel wonderful. You should do more of these with me because my office makes me feel miserable. So it's only when I'm with you that I feel empowered. All right, let me not delay you. Go ahead.
Also, the Apple things you were saying about the people being distributing, that was equity, I guess.
Right. Oh, wonderful. I must clap for you. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Did you pick that up in political science, civics? Is that it? You must have had
Yeah, we learned it. Yes.
That's lovely. It's so amazing to see that you know the difference between equality and equity. It's not easy, and we struggle with it even now. The number of cases I tell you that are filed on just equity versus equality, and because people don't understand the difference between the two. And in fact, if I see it correctly, I'm looking at my online database here. On today's date, you have 620,003 petitions on this concept alone. Imagine. That's a good statistic for you to know how wise you are. All right.